Wow, dear friends, so nice to see so many of you here tonight. So nice to have you here and as well on the streams all over the world. Lasse's Jutjänst has made this so wonderful again. Look at the stage, look at the sound. Most heartily welcome everybody to Joule or Julen. We don't really know how to pronounce it. But anyway, it's tonight's Nykarleby Innovation Center event. Feel, as I said, most heartily welcome, whether you join us live here in Stjärnhallen, the Arena of Stars, so nice to see so many of you here, or whether you join us by stream, wherever you are on the globe, på Joulen. My name is, as you could see, Kaj Kunnas, and I have the privilege once more, for the third time, to act host of this splendid event. Tonight with 5 top guests. Tonight with English as our language. Hope you enjoy tonight's event, Joulen, with, let's say, communication as the main headline. And ladies and gentlemen, give a warm hand to those who actually make this possible, to the organizers of tonight's event. Ladies and gentlemen, the NIC Stars. In normal life, it would be a high five, but not now. Thank you for wearing face masks. Thank you for wearing face masks. Our guests can then take them off once they're here. But August.
Yes, Kai.
What is NIC actually?
Well, let's say it like this. It's a non-profitable association with the focus and the task to make people to find their dreams and achieve their goals, and also to find each other to make great businesses together.
Wonderful words. I love dreams. I like goals as a sports commentator. But hey, Frank, why and how did NIC start?
Well, actually, the idea for NIC came from when I attended the Sampo Accelerator in Startup Sauna in Helsinki. Shout out to Mike in the audience and also a guest. And I really found that there's a big difference in the business culture there and over here. And I think we should take some of that over here. Openness, willing to fail, willingness to learn from those failures, and sharing ideas, working together. More of that, I think we need.
And Mike Bradshaw, that Frank was referring to, he will be one of the guests up on the stage.
Mike is the godfather of NIC. You could put it like
the godfather, okay. Well, Caroline, 2 years since you started, what have you achieved? What have you done?
Well, I feel that we have been doing a lot of fun things these 2 years, and aside from this annual event, we are arranging smaller events that focus on networking and discussing ideas together. And we will see a summary of what we've been doing on a film here on the screen later. But one concrete thing that has come out of NIC that we are all very proud of is that 5 startups has its foundation in NIC. So that's great.
5 startups. Maybe an applause for these 5 startups. I've also heard that you have a lot of cooperation with local schools. Could you, Lucas, tell us something about that?
Yeah, sure. So collaboration is really the key foundation of this non-profit association, as August was mentioning. And we're really happy to have been able to collaborate with Topelius Gymnasia, for instance, on their entrepreneurship, with their entrepreneurship students. And now also warmly welcome the students of Optima and Jakobstads Gymnasium that are watching this stream at the moment. So we would like to bring more students in this second and third stage especially together and kind of get them discussing, figuring things out and exchanging ideas.
Mm. Is there, Christopher, a physical place for NIC?
Yeah, well, I think that one of the first ideas we had when we started with NIC was to find a physical place where people can come together and share ideas and brainstorm and find new ideas and inspire each other. So, yeah.
Yeah, and as the world grows smaller and more interconnected, working together in different ways is something that we just can't escape. Communication will be the key to make ideas grow and innovation flourish. And by creating virtual and physical co-working spaces such as NIC, we enable this burst of creativity, and quite successfully as well, as we've seen for the last few years, and as Caroline mentioned.
Thank you, Daniel. Nice words. So nice to hear these words on cooperation. And as the Finnish head coach in basketball, Henrik Detman, he always says, the next generation is a better one. And when you have a look at these youngsters, it's so easy to nod to what Henrik Detman says. But Oskar, do you have some expectations for tonight?
Of course, I want to get inspired, maybe have some new ideas, and I'm really interested in learning more about the guests we have today. So that will be interesting. And yeah, I heard the keys to the internet might be soon available, so...
Ah, okay. One
Just
more
saying.
applause for NIC Stars. And now I think it's video time.
Yeah, hi, it's Peter here, and yeah, I guess there's a first time for everything. So this is the first time that I'm gonna miss the New Karleby Innovation Center fantastic event, annual event. But at least I can be with you with this short video. I think it's really fantastic to see that the New Karleby Innovation Center keeps going strong, and there's lots of activity. And it's my favorite type of activity because it's the young people leading the charge. And entrepreneurs are the people who are making things happen, making things change, and always kind of like leading the charge. And I think entrepreneurship is something that's very important to me. I've been an entrepreneur all my life. But I think that the way I define entrepreneurship is really that it's about doing. And when you do things, you learn. So that's something that is very, very important. So what you are doing now at the New Karleby Innovation Center is that you are learning by doing. And what you learn there will be very, very valuable for you, whatever you end up doing, building your own company or going to work for a slightly bigger company. In all of the things that you do, again, it's about the doing. It's about entrepreneurship. We need more entrepreneurial thinking, entrepreneurial attitude. We need to have an entrepreneurial mindset no matter where we end up working. So I think this is something, again, that makes me very excited about what you're doing at the New Karleby Innovation Center. Then maybe a quick update on what I've been up to since we last met about a year ago. So of course we've all been working through this pandemic, but haven't let that stop us. So one thing that I've been very happy with is that we actually started Finnish language education in Vietnam and Uzbekistan. So we taught a handful of young 15, 16, 17-year-olds in Vietnam and Uzbekistan the Finnish language. And very happy to announce that these young people learned the Finnish language in 6 months, and they have now started high school in 7 high schools around Finland. So I think this is something that is really, really impressive. And we're now taking this Salla model to the rest of the country. We started with Finnish language, but of course we want to do the same for Swedish language so that we can have a few more talented, hungry to learn, young people from around the world come to Finland and participate in what is the best school on the planet. So we are very proud of the fact here in Finland that we actually have what is probably the best educational system on the planet. We also run a small startup entrepreneurship training. So we now have several startup teams already being formed by these young people. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to work together. So we have this Finest Future High School project and the New Karleby Innovation Center. So it would be fantastic to take this startup entrepreneurship program to high schools all over Ostrobothnia and rest of the nation. So I think that we are seeing amazing startups being formed by some very, very young people. And I think that this is, again, learning by doing. So no matter if you end up doing a startup, working at a startup, or doing anything, I think that it's really something that you can use whatever you end up doing. So again, too bad that I couldn't make it there this year, but I'm sure we're gonna make it work for next year. And I hope you have a fantastic event, and I look forward to working together with all of you there in the New Karleby Innovation Center and the region. And I'm sure we can do amazing things together. So have a great event, and see you next year.
Yep, that was Peter Westerbacka, not physically here this time, but as we heard, next year he's here again. Also want to thank all the sponsors who've made this possible. But we have 5 beautiful guests tonight as well. Last year, maybe you remember Morten Mikkos. He joined us from Silicon Valley. Well, tonight we also have one guest, not maybe from Silicon Valley, but from the same time zone. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have the great pleasure of saying hello to Saara Novotny, the CTO of Microsoft Azure from Seattle. She's one of the, well, let's say, leaders. Microsoft Azure, many global things, communities, business founder. Saara has also spent, let's say, the latest decade building open source communities whose members have a combined market cap of $23 trillion. $23 trillion. It's really hard to grasp that. Hello, Saara. There you are. There you are with us from Seattle and a co-working space. Is that true that you actually now are in a co-working space where you live?
Where I live. So I live in a mixed-use building here in Seattle, and it was renovated from historical buildings. And the first floor is retail and restaurants as one would normally have. Then there are a couple of private offices. Then there's a co-working space. And then there are 3 residential units above the co-working space. And I am lucky enough to be able to live right here. I can go downstairs. This is actually my office, my own office. The co-working space is downstairs by 1 floor. And it's focused on where technology meets creativity. And that is to me really compelling. And that's this whole neighborhood here in Seattle is very much about tech and creativity and tension.
And now, is it like is it 8:20 there?
It is.
So is it bacon, eggs, and NIC that you have for breakfast?
I had a Mighty O donut for breakfast, let's be clear. I needed some sugar for this.
Saara, I know that you've been the mentor of Lucas, one of the NIC young stars. He tried to this week to help me with open source. But I still need your opinion and your kind of, what is actually open source?
So open source is primarily a way to develop software collaboratively. And that's really the shortest answer of it. It's also a licensing model for software so that people can consume it. But the work that I do and the work where I met Lucas is working on building the communities and the teams that form across all of the industry to make really big technical change in the open, transparently and collaboratively, without any real focus on corporate bounds. So I might be working with someone from IBM, or I might be working with someone from a startup on a given day, and I might be trying to help someone find a way to participate in open source on equal footing with Microsoft, even though they're not a 120,000 person company.
You have a little, is that a kind of painting or what, where it says Information Libre, free information? What does freedom mean for you if we talk of communication?
Freedom for me means a lot of things. I've grown up in the US, so that ends up offering a whole specific perspective on freedom. But for me, with the Information Libre sign, that is a that is one of the posters from the May 1968 riots in France that really were trying to shake up the dominant paradigm of the community and the world at that point, trying to make sure that we shake up the world and make it a better place with every opportunity we can. And to me, that is one of the ways that we can help the world today and the future leaders of our world is by freely sharing information and freely engaging with and coaching and growing those people that will be here long after you and I are gone.
Mm. I mean, if we, nowadays, when the communication is so easy in the world, we know everything at the moment what happens like in Afghanistan. But if the free information, if the information Libra is cut away, how do you see the world then?
To me, the world then becomes the storyteller's world to change. And that's perilous. We saw here in the US challenges where people told stories loudly enough that others believed them when they weren't based in fact. And that, I think, is really incredibly damaging to our world and our ability to engage and innovate and have meaningful relationships and authentic engagement and transparent collaboration. When we start being protective of information and dividing our world into us versus them, I get this information, you don't, then you put up all these barriers that slow everything down. And if we want to innovate rapidly, if we want to grow rapidly, if we want to learn rapidly, we have to be willing to share information, share experiences, help everyone grow.
Governments, they always want to save money. But what about if you think of open source? Could governments save money by embracing the open source?
They could, and there are several initiatives in countries around the globe where if government money is spent on software, that software needs to be put into open source licensing so that there's not that barrier. One of the challenges is, again, we're breaking down the dominant paradigms of business in that sense. And so many of these companies that have forever sold software to governments are struggling with this paradigm shift, with this change. And they're struggling with the growth that is necessary, both as an organization and then personally, to be able to accept constant feedback by working publicly. And that growth is a challenge. That growth is where we're going to find the hard culture change in the government purchasing processes and things like that. But yes, governments are starting to notice that. The EU government has noticed that and is making large investments in open source, or the EU government. And then the US has been doing this. China is making a huge investment in open source. So we're continuing to see this be taken up more by governments.
If I understood you correctly, you're anyway kind of a person who doesn't want to cling to the, in a way, power that you have, and that you think of acting more short time span than, Saari Novotny forever being here and taking care of this. Do you have a motto maybe that is something that has something to do with not clinging to the power, but kind of spreading it?
I have a couple of mottos, but I don't know that one directly fits to that. One of my favorite mottos is make no sudden moves. So when you're trying to work with a group, you need to make sure that entire group can move with you and you have to move at the pace of the slowest person. So you want to be sure you're sharing information with everyone and making sure that they're ready for the next step. So make no sudden moves is one of mine. But very simply, I've built my entire career on growing the next generation of leadership. So that, more than even just a motto, it's everything I do in a given day. I met Lucas working on the Kubernetes project, and his interest and his excitement about it, even though he joined when he was 15 and 16, was so great that he seemed like an obvious leader. He just needed to learn some things. And so we spent a bunch of time with him, growing him in that position, because interest will get you a long, long way toward leadership. If you're willing to commit, you just need to have the subject matter expertise. And that's what the old timers get to share and help with.
Yeah, as I mentioned, the Finnish head coach of the basketball team, Henrik Detman, he always says, the next generation is a better one. And I came back from the Olympics in Tokyo a week ago, and I experienced women's skateboarding there. We had a Finnish athlete, Liisi Armanto, who we thought that would take a medal. She ended up 14th. And she said that she didn't really bother, although she was 14th, because she saw how good the next generation was. Liisi Armanto is 28. I had the privilege to interview Sky Brown, who took the bronze medal in women's skateboard. Sky Brown, Great Britain. She's born 2009. 2009. I felt really old when I interviewed her. She gave all the interviews in a fantastic way. Sky Brown, 12 years, bronze medalist. And Liisi Armanto said, look how good she is. The next generation is always a better one. How do you feel about a story like this, and when you look at Lucas and people like this?
I think it's fantastic, and it's true. It rings very true to me, because you invest in the next generation. They have all of the benefits of the growth of technology that we have had to adopt as adults, some of us. I didn't get my first email account until I was in college. That's a fairly late access to the internet. So they benefit from all the technology that has happened during our lifetimes. And then where there is space and there is possibility, you can sit and you can help share some of the wisdom that is super important.
It's so nice to have you with us, Sarah. If you want to sit down, you can sit down, because the show will anyway take like 1.5 hours more. But is it okay, Sarah, if I introduce our next guest and our first physical guest? Is that fine?
Please do.
Ladies and gentlemen, a warm applause. Mike Bradshaw, head coach, Sampo Accelerator. You're from Otaniemi. Is that Finland's very own Silicon Valley?
No, it's Finland's very own Otaniemi.
Okay, yeah.
The world has one Silicon Valley. It doesn't need another one. What it needs is more new places with new things happening.
Yeah. Because you see, the NIC stars, they told me today that we are actually now not in Silicon Valley, but in lithium lowlands, because there's a lot of battery interesting things coming up in Vasa and here. So the lithium lowlands, how does that sound in your ear?
Yeah, that one works. Definitely battery technology is something that's very, very interesting for everyone. We're definitely going to have to change something. This summer showed that to pretty much everybody in the world, that we have to do things differently. We should have been doing things differently 20 or 30 years ago, but is it a Chinese proverb about the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, second best time is today. So if the lithium lowlands can come up with something that will help us with battery technology, then I'm all for that.
We already heard that Sarah has been working with Lucas, and Frank, he did actually mention you as the godfather of the NIC. How do you remember Frank when he turned up? And that took,
Pretty much the same as everyone else who turns up in our programs. They're a little bit lost, a little bit confused, occasionally confident, usually about the wrong things. And he was from this little village in the middle of nowhere, speaking this strange language that almost nobody speaks. I'm not talking about Swedish, I'm talking about the Finnish Swedish. It's a completely different language, obviously. That's how roughly I remember him.
And now you sit here and you gave quite an applause for the 5 startups that NIC has made possible.
Yeah, it's the interesting thing for me is, and one of the things I enjoy doing more is that going to the small places, that capital cities like Helsinki or Warsaw or Riga, they will always have startups. There's just a density of people. You put enough brains in a room and eventually one of them will have a thought and another one will hear it and it'll happen. But when you get into the smaller places, the places where they don't have as many of the available easy benefits, those are usually the more interesting companies. Those are usually the more interesting founders, because they don't, in order for them to go out and meet investors, they have to make an effort. You want to meet an investor in Helsinki, you pretty much open your front door and the first person you meet, maybe the third, but they're all over the place. It's trivial. The organizations that exist to help you as an entrepreneur, you can't go 10 meters in the capital region without running into some initiative. But when you leave, as it was introduced to me, the Susiraja, the wolf border, Ring 3, and you go outside that, and you understand that, there's electricity and running water and internet, and it's exactly the same. It's just they don't have that density. They have to overcome more. That means they're more passionate, they're more driven. Fundamentally, for me, they're more interesting founders. I can't do the numbers in my head, it's not my skill, but I think if you crunch the numbers in terms of NIC's been running 3 years, it's caused the birth of 5 startups. For the population it's pulling from, that's probably one of the better numbers in Finland.
Sarah, you're also listening to what Mike is saying. Do you have any reactions, questions to each other?
Oh, I had lots of reactions of solidarity, because yes, the people who have to work harder are often those who are more invested in the work that they're doing. So they have to overcome something. It also pulls teams together if there is a common force that they're working against, whether that's not living in or not being created in a large sort of city. So there are many options in that space, but they have small people or small cities, people coming from small cities creating their startups do have to overcome things. This is an interesting comment or thought about underrepresented minorities as well. because they have to work harder to get the distance they need to.
Yeah, minorities have to work harder. That's in a way so true. But Mike, we talked with, or we actually had a nice little dinner before this one, and you said that there's a lot of bullshit jobs in the business.
Yeah, it's not my theory. It's
Okay.
My career, my job is mostly recycling other people's thoughts and finding the smart people and then repeating their message and until some of it lands in fertile ground. And this was a thing that I came across where it's another thing that we need to try and move away from, is that if you look around and think about, for the young people, what your parents do and these people you see around, and you ask, what do you actually do? And if their answer is, well, truthfully, when I go to work, what I do is I mostly produce
Emails.
carbon dioxide and PowerPoint. Not necessarily PowerPoint, just slideware, or they generally don't actually make a thing. They just move stuff around. And you can use a search engine of your choice to find the book. It's called Bullshit Jobs. I haven't read it. I read the Wikipedia article. You can also get the gist of the thing from most business books. You don't need to read the whole book. Just read the Wikipedia article, and then you too can be, bluff your way onto the stage and sound like you know what you're talking about.
Mike, he's British, but has stayed for 18 years in Finland. Sarah, communication during COVID times has been Teams, Zoom, Teams, Zoom, Teams, Zoom.
Let's see.
We would so much want to have you here as well, but of course this is a good way of having your... How do you, Mike and Sarah, how do you feel, Sarah, start, how do you feel about this kind of communication? Teams, Zoom, Teams, Zoom, Teams, Zoom.
It is cognitively more difficult than interacting in person, because your brain is actually spending extra energy to try to pretend that you, Kai, are in 3 dimensions for me, when in fact I'm talking to a wall. But beyond the cognitive load that's harder, for me, within my job, as much as I can communicate information this way, I don't communicate sentiment. I don't feel as if I'm making connections with people. So there's much less give and take in this. And in this sort of communication, we are making do with what we have. But I very, very much miss being in person and having the fun, amped up conversations where we just get to go, and one more thing, and we interrupt each other and we build on it, and we have Mike giving a great point, and then I can be like, Mike, that was great, and even touch Mike, that would be crazy. But that is all conveying communication in this, and it's so flat when we're talking about just a video.
Mike, how would you describe successful communication?
I get the easy question. Good question.
And I always admire people who can say, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's probably lots and lots of different things in there. There would be the reaction of the person, the people involved in the conversation, in the communication, because it's not just communication is not just spoken, it's not just visual, it's also written.
Yeah. And the touches that Sarah was talking about.
The physical.
She can't touch you. She can't say that, hey, Mike, this was good.
Yeah, and that's the one I always forget. The emotional, and there's also some subconscious things coming off pheromones, and there's we have 5 senses as humans, and that's all part of communication. But I don't know. I think it would be more that the reaction you get is understanding. I like to give, help people understand that I try, don't always succeed, but to be more yes and, from improv. So I've never done improv, but my understanding is that when you're doing it, you work on yes and rather than no but. And this is it's more of a building communication. Not my area of expertise. I spend most of my time helping people get clearer pitches so that they can deliver clear messages in short amounts of time. So I hadn't actually thought about what is communication. No, good question.
I can totally hop in because I have a fun answer for this one. So communication is a couple of things. Communication is transfer of information. That's like absolute most basic. But that transfer of information has to come with context. And that context can be emotional context, that context can be physical context, that context can be knowledge context, and it can also be a power context. And in that communication, you have all of these different ways to share and deliver that information. And as Mike mentioned, that really touches on the senses. So what you see, what you hear, how your body responds to what the other person is saying or doing, how you rarely taste other people, but sometimes there's communication given that way as well.
You haven't been to our parties.
Okay, so note to self, the Nick parties, going to be a thing. No, the accelerator parties. Okay. But yeah, you work through the senses, touch. You have all of the pheromonal points, scent as well, and all of this communicates something. How many people have said something like, "I smell the fear"? You're communicating something.
One lady who I think doesn't smell the fear is a lady whose motto is never say no. Never say no. Ladies and gentlemen, our next guest says never say no. Anne-Marie Eklund Löwinder, Stockholm, but she's now, I think, hey Anne-Marie, is it the Åland Islands actually that I'm calling?
Yes.
And Anne-Marie, she's really a special lady because there is 14 literal keys to the internet in the whole world. You can see what happens here. I'm getting goosebumps because Anne-Marie has one of these 14 keys. So how powerful are you?
Not at all.
Not at all?
Nah, it's not about power. It's about making the internet better and more secure.
But what is one of these 14 keys of the internet? What are they?
Well, it's kind of a complex story, which probably would take me 60 minutes to tell you, but I can make a short one. I hope most of you are familiar Yeah, I need to turn off Bluetooth on my iPad because it wants to interfere all the time.
Yep. But
Sorry
now
about that.
we can hear you well now.
Okay, so I'll just turn it off. There you go.
Wow.
That is one of the backsides with Apple products. They always want to interfere. Yeah, it's really tiresome.
They're so
No.
helpful.
Right. Even though you don't want help, they are there to help you. Yeah. So DNS, or the domain name system, is one of the most important protocols on the internet, and a very old one too. And by the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s, the internet started to expand in a pace that made it difficult to keep track of all the different resources and hosts and their addresses. And there are when Paul Mokapetris started. He was just a newly graduated student, and he started he was given the task of developing a compromise based on different ideas about how to take care of the addresses on the internet. And the response to that was, no, he didn't make a compromise, he did something entirely new, and that is the domain name system. I can encourage you all, if you don't know anything about DNS or the domain name system, you should learn more, because very much of what you're doing are founded on the fact that DNS is working 24/7 all around the year. Anyway, so it didn't take long for Steve Bellowin, who is a security researcher, to find some flaws or vulnerabilities in the DNS protocol. It didn't really matter much by that time. It was 1990, because internet wasn't a common thing. It was just the academics. You know the people who were on the internet by name, or at least what university they were working for. So it was kind of a friendly environment. Nobody did any harm. Nobody didn't want to do any harm. And they did a lot of mistakes, but that's another story. Now, they kept that secret, that flaw, the vulnerabilities, they kept that secret for 5 years. In 1995, it was out in the wild. And then the Internet Engineering Task Force decided to start developing a protocol to make DNS more secure. And what you're doing is, actually, you are using cryptography and digital signatures. So you have a key that signs the entire root zone, so it becomes a trust anchor. So anything that you get from DNS, if it's signed, you know that nobody had been tampering with that information during the communication between servers. And the reason why I have one of the keys is that is actually a physical key. That goes to a security box, which is a big security a locker in a cage, in a data room, in a data center in Culpeper, Virginia. And we have a redundant or a copy, a mirror site on the West Coast in El Segundo in California. So there are 7 people for the East Coast, 7 people for the West Coast. I travel there 2 times a year to participate in the key ceremony to, with my physical key, bring out what's in that security locker, and that is smart cards. The smart cards are used to activate a hardware security module, a crypto machine, that is used to bring out the keys that will generate zone signing keys for the root zone to be able to sign for the next quarter. So, well, that was very brief. Sorry.
I mean, nowadays we have these cyber attacks. We've had the coup, we've had the Vastaamo in Finland. Sarah and Mike, are you afraid of the internet? Are you kind of worried that if I give some information to some place, suddenly it's all over the world?
So I'm not personally worried. You know, I know there are smart people out there who can do very clever things, but it's kind of difficult to find very small, like a specific piece of information. So it doesn't worry me. And then, I'm really encouraged that there are 14 nerds in the world who 4 times a year get together and unlock a box and play with some electronics for 15 minutes, and then they put the electronics back in the box, lock it up, and walk away. That's pretty difficult to get around. There's been a lot of smart people spent a lot of time trying to think of this stuff. Yes, stuff will break, but there were things that were done in the very early days of technology and computers that it kind of there's a lot of redundancy and a lot of backups and things happen that. So there's people have been doing this for a while, and one of the many things I do is listen to security podcasts because it's something I know very little about, and that makes me happy because there are people out there constantly trying to break this, trying to break everything, so that they can see how it was broken, so that they can stop it breaking in the future. So Anna-Marie brought up the example of you found it in 1990, but it wasn't a problem until 95. Maybe things will get quicker, maybe things will get slower. The one thing you can say about technology is it never works.
Sarah, and then Anna-Marie, why is open source actually safer, or is it?
Aha! That's a fascinating question. There is a long-standing trope that all bugs are shallower with many eyes. So when you share your open source, when you share your work showing how you've built this tool, you can have everyone or anyone who chooses to look at it and investigate it. So in the broadest sense, there's a possibility of more people investigating, looking at this code and finding flaws. The actual reality is that doesn't always happen. And there are lots and lots and lots of very small projects that the internet is very dependent on. And those projects are important in a way that is not new and shiny. And in tech right now, we still have an obsession with what the new is and the future is. And so it's not glamorous to go take care of, for example, a time library, because that's not super exciting. So there are risks right now in our infrastructure that don't scare me particularly because, to Mike's point, the internet or computers will always break at some point or another. We merely have to work to decrease what is called the blast radius, make any problem a smaller problem when it does break, because things will break. And then to make sure that we have a sustainable way to keep work happening on these open source projects long term. And that's a lot of the work that I get to do in open source foundations. It's a lot of the work that it sounds like Anna-Marie gets to do in things like the IETF, making sure that there is not only a path and a standard and a ritual for this, but then that there is a way that that progresses in time and is maintained and improved over time. So what the internet really has done has allowed us to do things faster and at scale. So more credit cards can be stolen or more credit cards can be shared, but that's any tool. Any tool can be used as a weapon, and any tool that helps improve things in one way, like allowing us to shop online, also can be weaponized as a way to collect data and offer us risk.
Anna-Marie is also inducted into the Internet Hall of Fame. But Anna-Marie, we had the case Vastaamo here in Finland,
right,
which kind of got a lot of headlines. Who are the attackers in a case like Vastaamo?
People that are greedy people who want money. They don't really care. They have no feelings, to be honest, because they harm people, they hurt people, they make a lot of damage. But they are interested in getting money because they need financing for other part of criminal activities they have, like trafficking or weapons or drugs, whatever. So any dollar they can gain from attacking different services, it's on their plus side, it's on their account. So, and what is actually really sad about that story, the Vastava story, is that the attackers lately have understood that it's not only that you can attack the organization and ask them for ransom, but you can also ask any other clients for ransom, so even more money. And now that getting really close to people's, I mean, the people's lives, their physical or psychiatric health and things like that. So it's really serious. It was, in my opinion, one of the worst incidents in a very long time, because it doesn't only harm physical things, but people.
Anne-Marie, I already told people here that your motto was never say no, and when you was offered this one of these 14 keys, did you ever think that, I don't dare to have one of these keys?
Oh, no. I'm not scared. I'm curious. I mean, that is one of my driving forces, dare to be curious.
Oh.
Because that is how you learn and how you get all those fun appointments. I mean, don't think that, how should I ever manage? Just think, I will. And if I don't, I fail. And then I learn something from that as well.
Sarah gives you a heart there, and Mike wants to.
Yeah, I think there's something coming back to the startups thing. Is we in the world of startups, everyone talks about failing fast, and really it's not about the failure. You tried something, it didn't work. The only way you fail is if you didn't learn anything. If you do the same thing, if you do the same thing repeatedly, you're not learning. So then you're failing. But this is something where it's this sort of like a NLP, like language trick. You can use the right words and you can reprogram yourself. It's not failing, it's learning. I tried something, and now, the Thomas Edison, I haven't failed, I've discovered 10,000 ways that don't work.
Yeah. Anne-Marie,
Okay, I'll give you one of my mottos, which is make new mistakes tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's
I like
one.
that.
Yeah. And then the other one is that discomfort you're feeling, or another one along this line. That discomfort you're feeling, you're learning.
As we've heard, Sarah has been the mentor of Lucas. Brad is the godfather of NIC. How long do you have this key, Anne-Marie? Because Oscar would want to have this internet key.
Yeah, why not? I mean,
he would want to have it to Nykarleby.
Yeah, you can apply if you send an application to ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. They have had a call recently because they want to replace people. I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm ready to turn it over to somebody else, hopefully a younger person, hopefully a younger female person, because I am the only woman in that crowd. And I think it would be sad if we couldn't be more diversified. I was thinking about that when you were talking about communication. And one thing that I think about when it's we're talking about communication is like, care about the person you're talking to and remember what they are saying. I mean, it shows that you care, and it gives you more in return if you have this communication that actually means something. it will build a stronger bond between you, and you both will benefit. And you know, Sarah, you were talking about leading a team and slow movements. I really like that, because I am the kind of person who's running fast, and I forget to look over my shoulder to see if people are actually there. So I have to go back time over time, and then I get irritated, and you know, so it's really good. I really have to learn that. And then network, and dare to be personal, dare to share personal things. It's not that difficult or hard.
This sounds.
Yeah, sorry.
No, this sounds good. I mean, you said that you give it to a female. I mean, I can ask Oscar whether Caroline could get it, and then maybe you could turn up in Nykarleby next year when we have the 4th of these, and then we actually could give the key to Caroline. Wouldn't that be nice?
It's not how it works, I'm sorry. No. I have to return it first so I can. And then
but hey, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of communication in this world. Some of it even in different languages, in languages you don't know, and with the help of music. Our next guest is introduced now. Sofia Ahläng, ladies and gentlemen. It's said that you come from Helsinki, but isn't it Solv?
Yeah, it's Solv.
Yeah.
I study in Helsinki, so I live in Helsinki.
Sofia, you communicate via music.
Yeah.
Without any audience, or?
Well, I do have an audience, but as a songwriter, it's not the traditional audience you'd imagine, because, well, I don't perform like that. But in this industry, as a songwriter, when we send the songs out from a publishing company to a record company, those people are my audience, and the actual artists are my audience, because they are the ones choosing between I don't even know how many options of songs. But yeah, those are the ones I have to impress.
Sofia made a song called Te Amo.
Yeah, well, it wasn't called that when I made it.
Okay, what was it called when you made it?
I don't even remember.
Okay, but Te Amo, it's number 6 at the moment in the world's most...
I don't know where it is at the moment, but around 2 weeks after it was released this summer, it was the 6th most downloaded song in the world. I'm pretty sure.
Wow. Wow.
Thank you.
So I mean, you're almost on every smartphone and every tablet in the world. There is Sofia Ahläng.
Well, yeah, sort of.
When you've listened now to Saara and Mike and Anne-Marie, and how, I mean, I asked Mike about what is good communication. Is music the best way of communicating with people?
Well, I think that obviously depends on what you want to communicate. But yeah, I do definitely think it's a great way because, well, for example, this song, Te Amo, it's in Korean. I didn't write it in Korean.
In Korean?
Yeah.
Hep hep in Korean?
Yeah. This artist, she's Korean, and she rewrote the lyrics that I made, and they are now in Korean. And
okay, do you understand Korean?
I don't.
Okay, so what about communicating there?
Well,
how do you know that it's you know the same?
Well, I've looked at the translations,
yeah,
but it's not entirely the same, obviously. But I don't think I have to, because I do think with K-pop, a lot of people who listen to K-pop, especially in like the Western part of the world, don't speak Korean. and they don't understand Korean. So maybe you don't have to understand, because you can just enjoy the music anyway, and you get a vibe from the music, and maybe you don't have to understand the lyrics.
Sarah, Anna-Maria and Mike, when you listen to Sofia, this is a new way of communicating, but this is also a wonderful way of using internet, smartphones, tablets, everything. Maybe Sarah starts, Anna-Maria, and then Mike.
Okay. Yeah, I mentioned in communication that emotion is an important part of what you're communicating, and music and sound and video do that so much better than text. And we do it, of course, so much better in person, but right now tech is what enables us to still be able to have these conversations even while I'm still in Seattle and Anna Maria's on an island and you all are happily collecting with a group.
Anna-Maria.
Well, yeah, I mean, since I took my exam in computer science in 1984, there was a lot of actually virtual reality experiments back at that time where they had people playing from different places, and they're trying to get it together without a very competent or potent internet connection, and that worked. I mean, so you can still, it's a good way to create that kind of content. I really like it. I mean, we have, during the pandemic, we have had a number of Swedish choirs getting together and singing online, which is beautiful. It sounds perfect.
Yeah, I'm going to take a slightly different tack. I can't remember whether it was this week or last week, but I'd been asked to help give some feedback to some Korean startups. And about a third of the Korean startups were building apps to help K-pop stars communicate with their fans. And the big thing was that the largest chunk of their fans were not in Korean or able to communicate at all in Korean.
We heard already Peter Westerbacka tell us the story about the Vietnamese people who learned Finnish in 6 months. I mean, the world is so open now, thanks to people like you also, Sofia.
Yeah, I think it's really incredible also because, well, me, as someone who listens to music, I've never listened to K-pop myself. Like that has never been part of my repertoire. But yeah, it's so cool how I can just like experience this whole other, well, a big part of music that I wouldn't ever really experience it otherwise if I didn't do this or hadn't done this.
I know that you study languages. Yeah.
Well, I'll pop
Sarah.
in, Sophia. Do you recognize the song? Like, does it feel like the song you wrote? Because that's even with new words and a remix, does it feel like it?
Actually, I thought about that quite a lot because I really do. I really see myself shine through in that song, and I think it comes from when I first did the song, and it was the first song I ever really did in this way. I was doing this for about 2 years when I was 17 and 18, and this was the first one. And so I didn't know really what was expected from me, also since I hadn't really listened to K-pop, so I just went with whatever I felt was good and sounded good. And I instantly, when I first heard the track that I was supposed to work with, I knew what kind of vibe I wanted from it, and it was just very clear to me what I wanted it to sound like and what I wanted the lyrics to be. And I also made that song with my own voice in mind, because I was the first one who ever, when we recorded it, I sang the song. So it just fit me very, very well. And I think because the whole package was just, when we were finished with our song, it was just very good. And it fit me, and it fit my vibe and what I wanted it to be. And I think because of that, it was such a good, like, finished product already at that stage. Well, it shines through a lot more now because it was so clear from the beginning what I wanted it to be like. So for me, it's clear that that's my song.
This is really fantastic because here we are. Sofia has made this success during the pandemic. We have communication via Microsoft, via Sampo Accelerator. We have the internet keys, one of them at Anne-Marie. What a wonderful world we live in, actually, that a lady like Sofia can, during the pandemic, be a star in Korea, in Korean. How would you describe this world, this kind of communication that we have now? Mike can start.
I'll go first. It's one of those mildly annoying things that, yes, the world is different. Everybody who's alive at the moment will hopefully experience 3 different worlds. The pre-times, the during times, and someday in the future, the post-times. This is just a time that we're going through. Yes, almost nobody alive, or possibly nobody. The last pandemic was 1918, right? So there's some people who are alive who possibly remember it, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So get over it, get on with it. The world is different. So some things will be better and some things will be worse. Better. Now there's more people more able to do K-pop. A song from a person in Finland became world famous as a K-pop song. Lots of good things will happen, and you kind of have to you don't have to search for them, they will come. If what you're looking for is the oh no's, all the terrible things, you will find the terrible things. Maybe go and look for the good things, like fun, happy songs or sad songs, whatever you like. What's your thing that gets you going? And many people have, during the pandemic, learned a lot of things. Some people have discovered that they were better at mental health. They were more resilient than they thought they were. Some people have discovered that they really love dogs. Some people have discovered they really don't like dogs. The COVID puppies and things. So there's lots of things that have happened, and part of it is COVID, but how much? That's difficult to say because time is linear and it only goes forward. That was a long ramble. Somebody else can say.
That was a good
If I
one.
may add something, I just want to be a party pooper, because it's not only, the internet has, from when I started as an internet pioneer, where the future looked bright and full of colors and the rainbow was shining and there were unicorns everywhere. Now we have, on one side, we have all these people wanting to regulate the content, regulate what you are doing, how you're using it. And on the other hand, we have all these repressive states or that wants to control the citizens. There's so many dark clouds now turning up in the horizon that we really need to take care of right now, trying to go back to when it was open and free, information libre. It's like we need to get back to that. And it's not that it will happen by itself. We all need to get together and fight for an open, accessible, transparent internet that is for all people to use in a good way. End of preaching. Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah, do you have anything?
I do. I have a really interesting thought. At least it's interesting to me. I am paying attention to loss, the things that we lost by having to shut down and try to, shelter at home and in place over the last year. And recognizing that what we're going through is a once in a generation change. And it is a really interesting sociological shift for the whole globe. Like, it's an experiment. We're all having a common challenge that has local flavors. And as we go back to whatever the future, which, it's a bad metaphor, but as we move into the future and we try to determine what from the before times we want to bring through, we get to be very intentional about it. So being busy as a marker of success, I don't think that's really a valuable thing I want to bring through to my future. I don't want to have, a terminal answer of how are you? Oh, I'm busy. That's not a great answer for me anymore. So I want to be very intentional about what I bring into the future with me in a way that is, that is new to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, we still have one guest. A guest who really was struck by the pandemic and had to learn to communicate with Shanghai from his summer cottage in Munes.
Ni hao.
Ni hao, ni hao. Arigato. Ohayo gozaimasu. Och så vidare. I've been speaking a little Japanese the last weeks, but Ted, you were in Thailand on vacation when the pandemic struck. And what happened then?
Yeah, correct. We were spending the vacation in Thailand with the family, the Chinese New Year vacation. At the time when the outbreak in Wuhan started. At that time, not many people knew what it is, and I was following the situation closely, day by day. I was in touch with our people to understand, okay, so what's going on. And then we had to prolong our stay with 1 week to buy some more time to do that difficult decision whether to fly back to China or to fly home. And after really deep consideration with my wife and the family, then we decided that okay, we fly back to Finland.
To Munes.
Yeah, then that was the only choice we had to go to the summer house in Munes. Luckily we had it. And that was kind of strange also to accept an assignment in Shanghai and then suddenly find yourself at the summer house in Munes in the middle of February.
And when Sofia, during the pandemic, became a world star with her song, it wasn't that easy for you to kind of lead Mirka in Shanghai from your summer cottage in Munes with Teams meetings and stuff.
Yeah, I can kind of laugh today, but I promise you it was times when I didn't laugh. It was about doing the task and doing work with the family and the kids around like 24/7. It was to manage the time difference that on that time was 6 hours. So meaning I had to wake up early to get as much as possible of the Chinese working day. Yeah, it was a huge change, and I was counting before this event just to have give you some perspective of my working day. So I had in average 60 Teams meeting per month during the half year I was stuck at the summer house, and that was everything from a 3-hour management meeting to a 1-hour short business review or financial review. So yeah, that was really a learning.
360 Teams meetings in half a year in the wrong time zone.
Yeah, correctly, and I mean, how to inspire the people, how to motivate the people over the teams. I mean, I trust in I'm trust my person, and I'm quite convinced that I can anytime face to face, manage a discussion in my way, and then suddenly you don't have that opportunity anymore. And in a new business environment, I mean, luckily I've been there already 1.5 years before this, but still kind of new business culture. So yeah, it was really a nice challenge, but also I think a really, really good learning now when I can look at it in the back mirror.
And now this is a question for all of you 5. How do you think that communication will change in the future? Mike was already talking about the past, the present, and the future. The post-time. Do you think that, Sofia, what do you think? Are you going to make new songs in new languages and being a star in Ecuador, in Senegal, in Kosovo?
Well, probably not, since Sugar House is focusing on the Asian market, so probably not those countries. I might. Right now I'm studying, so I'm not really doing that right now, but I might.
Anne-Marie, you were talking about that it's so important now that we take care of the internet.
Right.
Do you think it will last? Or is there something new coming up?
Well, not in my time, to be honest, because it's not even on the drawing board any new protocol that even can compete with what the internet protocols are doing to us and how successful it has been. I mean, it's not that Paul Moka-Petris thought back in the 80s that, I will write a protocol that will make any single person on the globe to connect to this huge network and know the address to anybody else, and it's open, it's end to end. I mean, that is remarkable, and the basic protocol hasn't changed since that time. It's only this addition with DNSSEC, which is really, really important, because you need to make sure that people looking for information, websites, sending email, can be sure that they are reaching the valid and correct website or the valid and correct email server. And that is what DNSSEC is doing for you. That is why it's important. And I have actually an advice to the entrepreneurs, young people who are developing new services and new features and new apps. You need to be aware that anything that you can make use of can only also be abused. So if you don't think about and don't plan to defend, you actually plan to not defend, which is bad for all of us. You need to think very carefully about how to build in security by design, security by default, or whatever you like to call it. They need to be there from the beginning. And that is my very important advice to you. Make sure that that will happen.
Ted, were you ever afraid when you made all these Teams meetings that some information that is really vital for Mirka Shanghai would end up who knows where?
Yeah, I mean, that risk always exists, of course, but I'm quite confident with our in the way that our companies is dealing with these kind of things, and I feel that our environment is really safe. Of course, we also use the Chinese solutions to some extent, like the WeChat, but not for this kind of communication. That's more of like a fast chat before the lunch or just before the coffee break or something. So I think maybe I know my knowledge of all the risks. My poor knowledge of all the risks is to my favor in this case. That if you would know everything that can happen, you wouldn't probably need.
But you touch upon something very important here, because as in physical life, choose the tool that suits you for the situation. I mean, everything isn't a nail just because you have a hammer. So it's the same with these digital tools. Choose the one that is suitable for the situation that you're in.
Mm. Sarah, you mentioned protectionism in one of your early speeches. Protectionism instead of everybody benefiting from the internet, from the open source. Shouldn't that be quite clear to everybody? Why is it so difficult to not be protectionistic?
I think we were grounded well in not being protectionistic, in being open, in working in a collaborative, academic sense, as ARPANET and the MILNet and all of the varying early precursors to the internet we know today were built together. Those gave us this sense that Anne-Marie described of, we're all friends here. It was just a large group of really awesome people who had quirky interests sharing information on the net. And that's great, and that's wonderful. But also to her point, if you decide not to protect something, if you don't think about how any tool can be used as a weapon, you have to, you fundamentally have given away that choice. So you need to pay attention to how tools are used and how weapons are formed out of them. But I am always a fan of the positive sum game, because we're always building on work that has happened before us. And if we keep that knowledge too close, then we will struggle to innovate. So sharing this, making the globe understand that infrastructure at this point needs to be globe spanning, not nationalist, is a long stretch, long work we have to do ahead of us still.
Yeah, and when touching the IT security aspect here, I think also the learning from China has been that it's already, when you prepare the material, you have to consider, so screenshots can be sent over the WeChat all over China before the meeting has ended. So this is also something that you can see, that if you have some detailed WeChat conversation with a client, he might publish a screenshot of that conversation immediately after. And that's how it is. So this is something you need to consider in every discussion, in every conversation. Is it on WeChat or Teams or wherever that the material is more or less public at that point when you present it.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of build on that in that we're talking about communication, but it's fundamentally about people. Ted mentioned this earlier. And I'm kind of hopeful. The three of us here with the winning hairstyle. If you want to succeed as an entrepreneur, this is the hairstyle to get. We've had to learn this. We've had to learn about security, learn about screenshots being taken and shared. The generations, what are they? The Gen Zs, the 16-year-olds. They grew up with this. When they were in middle school, they were getting Snapchat with the messages disappearing and learning about things being screenshotted. So this for them is like walking and breathing. And for us, and that gives me a little bit of hope that things could be better, but it does rely on us being willing to share, being vulnerable, being open, and some things are getting better. More things are being communicated more openly. There's less taboo topics. People are learning how to communicate across cultures. There's a huge cultural gap between Europe and the USA, and between Europe and Britain, and we're all speaking the same language here, English, but there's gaps there. There's miscommunication, but it comes back to what's the motivation of people. And also that what's that person's experience? What's their background? Have they had something stolen? Are they scared? Have they had bad things happen throughout their life? So that the first time something good happens, they're not able to accept it. But the second time, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and as long as there are people who are willing to keep giving people that opportunity to experience the good things, to experience communication, to experience the positive things, I think the world could be a better place. I have some hope.
Sofia, you're the youngster here.
Yeah.
you know what Mike was talking about. How do you feel about what he was saying?
I guess I just agree. Because a lot of these things that we're talking about, like now, they're kind of just, I've always been aware of them because I've grown up with it in a different way. So I guess maybe I don't think about it as much because I've been living with it. I've grown up with it. Sharing.
You study languages as well. And now when we listen to Sofia, she speaks, you could be from Baltimore, you could be from anywhere. How many languages do you speak?
That kind of depends on how you count, but I like to say I could get away with probably 5.
Swedish?
Yeah.
Finnish?
Yeah.
English?
Yeah.
German?
Yeah.
French?
And then I'd say Danish, and also kind of Norwegian, but it's too much
and
of a
maybe
dialect.
Italian and French and
maybe
Spanish and
well, soon enough.
Yeah. Because this is, we know how difficult languages are, but Sofia doesn't seem to understand that languages are difficult. You just speak everything.
Except for Finnish.
Well, okay.
That's difficult.
Yeah. Well, you're from Solv.
I am.
You're excused.
Yeah, thank you.
But do you see internet as a language as well that brings the whole world together, a little bit like it has brought Seattle, the Åland Islands, Nykarleby, everybody together, Korea?
I do. Because without it, it wouldn't have happened. None of my business, with my song and everything, none of that would have ever happened. I would have had to try really just to, I don't even know who I would try to reach from Solve, because it wouldn't be South Korea at least. I think it's really important, and it wouldn't have happened without the internet.
Ted, if you think of local communication and international communication, if you communicate with your neighbors in Muunes and then you communicate with your employees in Shanghai.
Yeah, that's a huge difference. I mean, in Muunes, if I say, then everyone knows that I agree to what he just said to me. If I'm in China, I'm not very good at Mandarin, so I need to make sure that I speak a very clear English, very slowly. Then most of people can understand what I'm saying, and so it's a huge difference. And by the time I think when you're traveling and in different countries, you understand how to behave and how to express yourself in different business cultures.
Sarah and Anne-Marie, how would you describe Internet's role in making communication globally better?
Because it's end-to-end. You don't need an allowance to connect to the internet. You just do it, and you can communicate with anyone you like, anywhere on the globe. But that is right now about to change, which is really sad. But that is what it is, and that depends on what you mean by internet. Internet is not web. I just have to make that clear. The internet is the infrastructure that carries all the different services and applications that we are using. So the infrastructure itself is a kind of technical part that works perfectly well, very robust, very redundant. Now, these days, we are getting back from the decentralized world where everything is redundant and working perfectly well, even if it's a crisis somewhere. Now we are trying to centralize all the services. For instance, with the content delivery vendors that, when they have problems, a lot of companies over the world have problems because we are doing a mistake here. It's an architectural mistake, it's a design mistake. So we need to think about that too. Internet is working, it's redundant, it's everywhere, but if you decide to put your content on one single provider, you're back to something that is not really good.
Sarah.
I think that the internet is fascinating for sharing information in the sense of democratizing it, and that information translates pretty closely to power. And the ability to share information more freely, the ability to make connections more directly, to not be intermediated by a government, to not be intermediated by a corporation, gives individuals more power and more accountability in how they improve the world. And it gives us a whole huge opportunity to invest any sort of power and privilege each of us has to help improve the structural and systemic challenges that exist across the globe that we need to change to make the world a better place. So for me, the internet is paramount, and free flow of information is paramount to the global change and good that we can make. And as we slip back toward protectionism, I very much worry about this.
Yeah. So, Sarah, may I ask a question for Sarah? I've been chewing on this for some time now, which is quite detailed in the kind of, when I have such a celebrity in open source, and the possibility to ask, I would like to know, over the last 20 years, the back-end infrastructure of almost all major internet and telco greenfield and brownfield rebuild models have moved to rely on open source and cloud-native principles. But still, many or even most of the end-user applications are proprietary, such as the Office suite, Windows, smartphone, UX, etc. When is the time ripe for the similar change on the front end, and what would be the role of the open source community in this? And what new competence would the community need to attract and deliver on? Because you need more people feeding into this system, this community.
Yeah.
Well, easy question, isn't it?
Yeah, piece of cake. But I have thought about this. And the space for me that is most important in this is making sure that there are places for people to engage, to be able to give open source that looks more toward end users. The challenge that we have within that now, and I think it will be a generational change in companies and in technology in general. The challenge we have right now is infrastructure suits open source very well because it is very much about text, and there are right and wrong answers and things are moving. It's not a lot of design or marketing generally to try to draw in an audience. And within open source, we struggle to reward the softer skills, the not coding skills. And so until we find a way to reward not coding in open source consistently and evenly and draw those people into the projects and show how the work will benefit the industry and the world, I don't think we're going to have things that are easy enough and comfortable enough and designed enough and focused on users enough to actually have a robust commercial or a consumer software setup.
Yeah, so because user experience is arguably an area where the community currently, for the mass market at least, lacks ability to deliver, and the commercial proprietary offerings are generally doing a better job, and that's sad in a way.
Yeah.
So, okay, I trust you on this.
Well, thank you.
Then I have to ask all of you, do we get down from the clouds somewhere, somehow, or are we in the clouds more in the future? Because now in Japan, during the Olympics, you had to have hard copies of everything. Hard copies of me being vaccinated 2 times for COVID when I went there. Hard copies of all the negative COVID tests in Finland. All the 21 negative COVID tests during the Olympics that were taken. It wasn't enough to show my phone. Yes, on the Finnish border it was enough. But I couldn't go into Japan without hard copies on paper of all these things. So are we taking steps back here? That we are a little bit afraid of things being up in the clouds somewhere?
No, I don't think so, but just showing your phone doesn't prove anything. How do you verify that it's your phone and your
and there wasn't
paper?
There isn't a stamp in my phone, but there was a stamp on the hard copy, and there was Ted.
I think from my experience, it's kind of a hybrid model. So in China we had the health code, the QR code that has to be green at all time. If it would be red, then you have to stay at home and probably wait for the special transport. So in a way they have digitalized the monitoring of the people with that code in the telephone. On the other hand, as you also said in Japan, in China, exactly the same thing. You need to have the hard copies of all certificates, test reports, and stuff like this. So it's on one hand, yes, we are digitalizing these kind of things, but then on the other hand, it's the traditional, document, the hard copy with the names and the stamps and all these formal things. So it's an interesting thing actually.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, well, it's understandable. I mean, we're doing papers for several years now, hundreds and hundreds of years, and the digitalization has just been around for like 30 years. So give it a chance. It will mature. It will mature a lot.
Yeah, I mean, speaking as somebody who's been living in Finland for a while and wishes to continue living here, long may paper rule. I have fond memories of the happy face of a Finnish administrator when I opened a binder full of certificates so they could happily scurry off and photocopy them. And make sure that plenty of paper was used and put in binders that nobody will ever look at. And to Anna Marie's point, these are still early days. How do we verify? Somebody much smarter than me, and probably a room of people, and preferably not a room of old men, but a group of different people of different ages and different identities will come together and discuss this, and they will be from different viewpoints, and they will think of this and create a system that is better than the current one, better than the paper, better than the existing digital of showing QR codes. Showing QR codes, good grief. Let's bang some rocks together and rub sticks or something. To go back to that's not innovation. That's not a better solution. It's just a solution. And it'll come from somebody we don't expect it to. You look at the early days of computer science. They were people who were studying things. There was a lot of linguists in the early days, and as well as mathematicians and I believe, yes, there's one of the guys who built the world's first computers, and then nobody knows about him because it was built during the Second World War. He worked for the post office. He wasn't a delivery guy. He was like an electrical engineer, but he worked for the post office. So we don't know where this is going to come from. No. All we can do is try and keep an eye out for it and help amplify the signal of something that's better. That it has. There's more security. That people who understand security all agree this is better. It's not that that people who have that deep domain knowledge point out that this is better, and then hopefully we can have other people who are good at communicating with politicians, who some are smart, some are not so quick, some understand, so they can get that message through, so that, and then we can get the message out, and so that everyone can understand. Again, I'm hopeful. We taught the world to wash their hands 18 months ago. Everybody in the world knows how to wash their hands properly now. Not everyone's doing it, but everybody knows. There are posters all over the world showing people.
And you should have seen the two of us in the toilet before we came here. That was hand washing.
There should have been a video of that.
Yeah. Well, there are plenty of videos about it. Not from you, but still. All the kids in preschool, they learned Blinka lilla stjärna, and when you were finished with that children's song, then you had washed your hand properly for like 2 minutes or something like that.
Mike got the most difficult question of tonight. What is good communication? You said that you never know. And I mean, who would have imagined that Sofia from Solve is number 6 on all the downloaded. So, I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But if you try to answer the question, what is good communication?
Well, I mean, as a not maybe linguist, but something like that, because I'm also not finished studying yet. My initial thought was just that if you get your point across the way it was supposed to be, then that's good communication. And I think I'm gonna stick with that, because you can just like include all sorts of aspects into that, all sorts of contexts into that as well. So if you get your point across the way you meant for it to come across, then that's good communication.
And in a way you know what you're talking about, because you wrote a song in Swedish, English. English. It was translated into Korean.
Sort of translated, rewritten.
And you got your point through in Korea.
I think I did, yeah.
I think we should listen to her.
Thank you.
Yeah, and anybody who can create art in their non-native medium is somebody that you need to listen to, and to that they've got a skill that is rare in the world.
And Ted, you also have a skill that is rare in the world. 360 Teams meetings from Monash to Shanghai, and well, Mirka does well.
Yeah, I mean, our company is still doing well, so I'm kind of happy and proud of that. At the end, everything is about the people. I used to say that you look after your people, the people look after your business. And this is really what I realized when I came back in August 2020 to Shanghai, met the office personnel again, and we had a meeting and a dinner and kind of a small party to catch up on all these things. And then I really realized that what a lucky person I am to have all these people doing the business, handling the daily task, and stick to the plan, achieving targets on daily, weekly, monthly basis. So really, that was a fantastic moment.
And I realize what a lucky person I am, because I've had Ted here tonight, Sofia here tonight, Mike here tonight, all of you here tonight, the NIC stars, the Nykarleby Innovation Center people, the youngsters. It's so nice to work with them. It's so nice to have to do with them. And then Sarah and Anne-Marie have been giving us hearts. You have to come to Nykarleby next year. Sarah, I saw that you nodded when Ted was speaking about the people and so on. If we still have one last comment from Sarah and Anne-Marie as well, but I mean it's been such a pleasure to have you around, although you're in your breakfast in Seattle. But thank you for your time, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm happy to, and thank you for such an interesting conversation across all of us. It's been lovely to hear the different perspectives.
Thank you, Sarah, and all the best for you over there. And Anne-Marie.
Yes.
Now the big question: to whom are you going to give the key?
Well, that I don't know, but I have trying to urge ICANN to select a female. It would be bad if it was only male TCRs, trusted community representatives, because the community is a diversity of people, not only from different continents, which we are now, but also different genders, different interests, different ages. So we'll see about that. Hopefully they will listen.
We'll see about that. But Oscar, maybe not. Caroline, Yes. Thank you for joining us here tonight. I wish you give a big warm applause to Sarah, Anne-Marie, to Ted, to Sofia, and to Mike. Thank you. And to the Nykarleby Innovation Center. And see you next year, I hope. Thank you for coming. You don't need to rush away home, but I mean, I promised to stop at 8 o'clock. Now it's 2 minutes to 8 o'clock. Thank you for everybody. Stay healthy, stay safe, and let's hope that the communication continues, not only from Munes. And I'm really hearing forward to your next song.
Yeah.
In what language?
We'll just have to see.
We'll have to see. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Sofia. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Anne-Marie. See you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
All the best.
Nice meeting you, Sarah. I could chat with you for a very long time. I will send you the response on the question on Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah. Just give me my priority choice.
Okay.
That would be great.
We can totally talk. I am happy to see.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Now I will probably get in touch.
Yes, enjoy the gym.